Welcome to the Four Rivers Ag Report. I'm Fred Peralta. Well, the farmers in our area are out cleaning up their fields, but our friends out east, they're busy cleaning up everything. A scraggly little Stage 2 hurricane decided she acted more like Carrie at the prom and made a bit of a scene. So I decided we'd talk to Cameron about how Sandy got so nasty and does she have any sisters? With me now is Cameron Craig, our good friend and contributor. And Cameron, when we have a weather question, I always come to you.
That's right.
And the weather question that's hanging over everybody's head is, what happened with Sandy?
Well, Sandy, when it came across just north of Cuba, it kind of strengthened into a Hurricane 2, and then it dwindled a little bit. But originally, people didn't think it was going to be that intensive.
Right.
And a lot of us were saying that it's going to, skip the United States altogether. We would see, winds and rain bands.
There was some talk of it going back out to sea.
That's
correct?
right. That's right. But there were two factors that contributed to it taking a left turn to the northwest, and that is a surface high pressure located near Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and then the jet stream above it. There was a trough over us. That's why we had the cold temperatures.
Right.
And then the jet jumped right back to the northwest, cutting across the just south of New York area. And so that's what Sandy did, is just just crossed the coast at a perpendicular mark.
So that was, all summer long we've been talking jet stream, jet stream, jet stream.
Right.
And we got back into sort of a more oscillating jet stream. Is this a normal pattern for this time of year?
Well, again, the jet stream can basically do what it wants. It fluctuates north and south.
Right.
This summer we had the jet stream too far to the north, and putting a ridge of warm, dry air in the Great Plains and in the Midwest. And so now it's getting to the point where the sun is now south of the equator. Right. And so the jet stream generally will migrate with the sun, and so that's where we're getting more of this jet stream fluctuation pattern.
Okay.
More troughs and more ridges. And people will go, well, we had 80-degree temperatures last week, and then we cooled off big time. That's because it's now doing this, a roller coaster effect.
Okay. Now, Sandy gained, it was a level 2 hurricane for the longest time, and all of a sudden it pumped up its volume. It got stronger, and normally that's due to being over warm water, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. So it being a different situation was Irene. Irene basically made landfall in the Carolinas and then moved along the coast overland.
Right.
And so that it kind of dwindled. It wasn't as impressive.
Right.
But Sandy had a little bit more time over the warmer waters, the Gulf Stream, which is a warm current in the Atlantic. And so it had a little bit more time to keep that energy going. And then, compounding the problem, was the high tide time there in the New York area. And so when you have these southerly winds and these southerly moving rain bands coming into that high tide area, then the storm surge would max out. Okay, we're talking record storm surge in the New York area.
How high was the storm?
About 13 feet.
Wow. How do you plan for that?
Well, they did a fine job in evacuating. That's the best plan that you can do. And what's interesting is that talking with my students, you hear about evacuations and everybody cleared out, which was great. But when you talk about people along the Gulf Coast, and then they don't evacuate as they should, it's because those people are more used to tropical storms.
Exactly. I saw some photographs of people boarding up windows in New York, and they looked woefully ill-prepared for that.
That's right. That's right.
So we get these storms occasionally. We don't get them often. But Irene moved up the coast. Sandy came in and knocked on the front door. Are we going to see more storms with this sort of weather pattern?
It's possible. We're nearing the end of the hurricane season for the Atlantic, so we may have one that pops up here and there, but because of the cooler temperatures and the sun being in the southern hemisphere, I think that we're going to see a dwindling of these storms. But again, weather will do its thing.
Now, Sandy also pushed, because it was so strong, pushed deep into the interior of the coast to the point where they were projecting possible lake surge flooding in Lake Michigan, of all places.
That's right. That's right. And that's due to the pressure gradient. When we talk about pressure gradient, we talk about millibars and the isobars that are packed in together that creates stronger winds. The Hurricane Sandy actually had the lowest central pressure on record in the Northern Hemisphere with 943 millibars. And so that's pretty impressive. And so that's why we saw 25 to 30 foot swells in Lake Michigan in the lakes area.
Okay. Now, that weather just didn't affect the lakes. It affected Ohio and Pennsylvania, and it affected, it affected farming there. These sorts of storms, can they affect other weather systems as it's coming across the nation?
Well, yes, they can help to stall things, or other weather systems can help dwindle or rip apart a hurricane. For example, we had that cold front that moved through our area last Thursday, cooled us down, and then it stalled just west of the Appalachians, and then here comes Sandy, and then you drop 2 to 3 feet of snow in West Virginia.
Right.
And my mother, living in just north of Indianapolis, was saying, "Are we going to get snow out of this?"
Yes.
Well, no, we're not going to get any snow out of this, but we want to. Well, I like snow, don't you? Okay.
I'll take the fifth. If it fell only on the fields, I'd be happy with that.
That's right. Well, the thing that created the snowfall in West Virginia was because the rains were wrapping around, and as the wind was coming up, it was compressing because of the increase in elevation. And so that helped to bring more snow to the Appalachians.
So this was a freak storm. It came in just the right time, high tide.
That's right. Superstorm, or as they call Frankenstorm.
Yeah. But, should we be preparing for the worst now? I know the governor of New York is making that suggestion.
I think so, and I think that governments and local governments will start to think about their contingency plans and better evacuation plans, because we could see an increase over the years. And definitely with the climate changing, there are a lot of scientists now are saying, okay, here we're in the heart of it. We're seeing evidence that it is occurring with significant drought this summer, and then this particular storm in the New England area. It's probably a good idea to go ahead and start thinking along the lines of what should we do in the event of so.
And that's the $64,000 question, isn't it?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, thank you, Cameron.
Thank you.
And now, with more weather and harvest news, is Monica Becker. Monica?
Thanks, Fred. I'm Monica Becker. Now, as Fred and Cameron talked about earlier, Hurricane Sandy was just another example of Mother Nature showing us who's boss. In other areas of the country, Sandy has delayed both harvest and field work. Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia have seen some crop damage, including downed corn, and the muddy fields have delayed corn and soybean harvest. Who else had issues with Sandy? The USDA, that's who. Federal offices in Washington were closed earlier in the week in order to avoid Sandy's wrath, and in the process, delayed the weekly crop reports. But when it came out, it showed that last week we were done with corn, and this week we're basically done with beans. A field in here and there to go, but really all done. What we grew around here is in the bin or at the elevator, so what's left? The crop insurance claim. With a vast majority of farmers in the area having crop insurance, most of you are probably waiting for a check. And you're in good company. According to the Doane Agriculture Services, crop insurance payments may exceed $25 billion. Nationwide, over 1.2 million policies were written, covering over 280 million acres. It is estimated that at least half of the policies written will have claims made against them. All of these are records. The previous record, $10.8 billion paid out in 2011. Now, a company that probably wishes they had some of that green is Archer Daniels Midland. ADM announced Tuesday that first quarter profits were down at $182 million from $460 million for the same quarter last year, with revenues flat at $21.8 billion versus $21.9 billion last year. The stated reasons for the lackluster quarter are the sale of a Mexican food company, a drop in processing business, and a weak global demand for ethanol. Consumers of corn and soybeans are hoping that South America can step up to the plate and make up for the lower yields in America due to the drought. I hate to rain on their parade, but in Argentina's Corn Belt, storms have dropped a year's worth of rain in less than a month. The area, still recovering from last year's drought, is reporting a delay in planting due to, as one farmer called it, fields of mush. All in all, economists in the area are predicting a 20% drop in the country's estimated corn yield and a 10% drop in soybeans. Row crop farmers throughout the nation are looking forward to the 2013 growing season in hopes of a better year. Todd Gleason reports what the net income from an average piece of farmland in central Illinois could be expected to provide.
The 2012 harvest is done. Good riddance to a rotten growing season. Now the question is, what will the land provide in 2013? There are many factors, but from this vantage in time, looking across now barren farms, the best guesses are based on economic data. Price projections, like the ones the ag economists at the University of Illinois have put together for acres farmed under a 50-50 sharecrop rent agreement.
What we do is we start with our corn and soybean prices. Our corn price is $5.50 and soybean price is $12.50. Looking at 2013, there we have $510 to split between the landlord and the tenant, and the typical 50-50 share rent lease would give $350 to the tenant, and the remainder would go to the farmer.
Those returns would provide both the landlord and the tenant an above-average return and are based on current University of Illinois price projections for the 2013 crop. If the U of I is wrong and prices slip to what the Illinois team has deemed the new long-term midpoint prices, $4.50 corn and $10.50 soybeans based on harvest month futures, then net profit slips to $340 an acre.
Obviously, with $340 to split between the landlord and tenant, there's a lot less to split than $510, but a share rent lease under those conditions would result in $265 worth of returns and roughly $75 going to the farmer. So, considerably less than what people have gotten accustomed to in the last several years.
Well, the bottom end of the projected price range is $3.50 corn and $8.50 beans, with a net profit of $170 an acre. It would all, under a 50-50 share rent agreement, go to the landlord, plus an extra $10 an acre out of the farmer's pocket. A rather chilling thought as autumn wanes in the Midwest. For University of Illinois Extension, I'm Todd Gleason.
And finally, a flock of more than 2,000 sheep were herded through central Madrid on Sunday in defense of ancient grazing and migration rights threatened by urban sprawl and modern agricultural practices. A few shepherds were exercising their right to use routes that were established across Spain years ago, before Madrid was even a city. Due to an ancient decree, shepherds have a right to use almost 80,000 miles of paths for moving flocks from the cool highland pastures in the summer to the more protected and warmer lowlands in the winter. Every year, a handful of shepherds defend the right to use the crossing. How did we know there were 2,000 sheep? We don't. The person in charge of counting them fell asleep halfway through. That's it for this week. I'm Monica Becker.
Now, it's November and it's time that families start to figure out the maze that are family traditions. And as a friend of mine used to say, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. So here with me today to try to figure out how to deal with everything that are our holidays traditions is Sherry Bertram, the extension educator for the U of I Ag Extension Service. And Sherry, sometimes traditions feel like an anchor rather than a gift.
You're right. That's, you know, every year sometimes we come to dread the time of the holidays, especially Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all the different traditions you have to sort through. And it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
You know, if it, in a way, you know, if it becomes to the point where it feels like an anchor, it feels like a weight, I think it's time to reevaluate and, you know, come up with another game plan of maybe something that'll work out better for your family.
Well, as you're dealing with your family and as you're trying to figure out what to do, what considerations should we take? How should we weigh, you know, where we meet, how, you know, what food we serve, who to invite, that sort of stuff?
Well, I think, you know, each family comes into this with their own tradition, their own rituals, their own foods, where they always, you know, met, what time of day they did, what day. And, you know, especially when a young couple, you know, comes together and they're newly married and it's my family does this, well, mine does this on the same day. And, you know, you have to look at that and try to decide what's going to be best for you as a couple. And sometimes there may be a few hurt feelings, but you have to lay it on the line and say, you know, we don't want to cause any stress here, but possibly we're going to have to either move one to a different day or possibly, like my family did, one year we do it one place, one year we do it the other place to try to appease both. Then you have, then you come up with the who's first, but you know, you get to that eventually.
That's where the coin flip comes into play.
Exactly.
You know, families are very interesting, you know, and there's all sorts of issues that come up and involved, and sometimes family members don't necessarily get along or sometimes even don't speak to each other. When you're dealing with traditions like Thanksgiving and Christmas that are these milestone family events, should we bury the hatchet so long as it's not in our sibling skull?
Oh, you know, it just depends on the situation. I think sometimes as things play out during the holiday, it kind of takes care of itself because maybe there's just so many people around, you don't really have to address that person. And, you know, I think you can be civil and not bring up old issues and just, you know, you're not pretending nothing's wrong, but you're just sidestepping that issue for the time being for the whole family's sake.
Okay, so when we're planning these events, you know, why are some traditions harder to shed than others? Why do we have to have candy yams every year?
Well, you know, again, if it's something that's been happening for so long, and people really tie those traditions to good memories that they've had in the past, and it's like if they don't continue to do those the way they did, it's just not going to be the same. And they have to realize that sometimes things have to be adjusted. And like my family, you know, we all used to get together at Grandma and Grandpa's. Well, now Grandma and Grandpa are in their late 80s. They're not able to do what they could do before, cooking-wise and such. Plus the house has shrunk, or we've gotten too big, one or the other. So now we've kind of compromised. We went to a community building, and we actually don't meet on. Yeah, we go there. It's neutral ground. We actually have it catered. We don't even cook.
Excellent.
I know it's kind of a way off, but you know, everybody kind of came to that decision together, and it really is a lot less stressful. And Grandma and Grandpa can enjoy it a lot more.
Okay, so speaking of Grandma and Grandpa, you know, so many of these memories are tied to the patriarch and matriarch of the family. You know, we're doing these traditions because Mom always did it this way, Dad always did it this way. You were suggesting before we came in here that that might be a really good opportunity to take advantage of a great moment.
Yeah, you know, the older generations, obviously they're not going to be around, you know, as long as we would like. Yeah, and we don't know how long that is. So it's really good to encourage them to try to record their stories somehow, their life history. And, you know, some of them seem daunted by that because they don't want to sit down and have to start writing or they don't think that they have anything interesting to say. And it's important to try, you know, to encourage them and convince them that, look, when you're gone, your story's gone too. And there may be things we really, we would love to know about you.
Right. And what the dilemma I've had is that you don't want to insult somebody by suggesting you're so old you're going to die, that I want to make sure I get your story on tape. But this might be a great opportunity to get the grandkids involved.
Right. Maybe a way to go about it is to, talk with them about, look, this would be a great Christmas gift for someone if you wrote down or recorded, a story about yourself.
Right.
And so, you're not necessarily talking about the end. You're just saying, hey, this would be something unique and different, and something that we could get. And there's so many different ways to do it. They don't have to write. They can do an audio tape. They can do videotape. Something we suggest, an extension to people, is having a younger one interview them.
That's a great idea.
And then they get that interaction too, to work with them.
And it's somebody to keep stories from meandering off course a bit. Not that that ever happens, mind you.
Right.
So what a great idea. And as far as, sharing responsibilities for the holidays from family members, is there a good hip tip for getting everybody involved so no one person feels like they're Atlas holding the world on their shoulders?
Well, I think, delegation is key. And it can, some people, they feel like it's all on their shoulders, but then if they need to look at all the things and say, okay, is it because everyone's leaving it up to me, or I've just insisted on doing things and they assume it's, and I think that if they started delegating responsibilities and saying this would really help if you, that would work very well.
Well, Sherry, thank you very much. This is a great idea. Maybe the best gift we could give our families is a nice, pleasant, happy family holiday. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, we didn't have a hurricane, but we did have some interesting weather in the month of October. Cameron Craig is back to tell us about it in this week's Under the Four Rivers Skies.
We left September with nearly 5 inches of rain above the 30-year average that helped to reverse the drought situation here in central Illinois. October continued the trend with slightly above normal precipitation and a slightly below normal temperature. Let's do the numbers. The total amount of precipitation this October was 3.90 inches, putting it 0.79 inches above the 30-year average of 3.11. The average temperature was recorded at 55.0 degrees, which was 1.7 degrees below the 30-year average of 56.7 degrees. 5 significant storm systems provided the region with ample amounts of precipitation to continue to improve the drought situation. The first occurred between the 1st and 3rd of October with 0.24 inches. The second system dropped 1.02 inches of rain on the 5th and 6th. The third significant event occurred between the 17th and 20th with 1.23 inches. The fourth event left the region wet with 0.78 inches received on the 22nd and 23rd, and the final event on the 26th provided 0.48 inches of rain. The overall month was slightly cooler than normal, with only 3 maximum daytime temperatures reaching 80 degrees and the lowest recorded temperature of 30 degrees on the 8th. The first 4 days of the month started out with a high in the upper 60s, then dropped to the upper 50s. Daytime highs began to rise to 80 degrees by the 4th. Another cold air mass, along with a significant trough in the upper level, dropped the daytime high into the low 50s by the 7th. Between the 8th and 14th, the daytime highs bounced around between the upper 50s, mid-60s, and finally mid-70s. Another chilly trend occurred between the 16th and 21st, with a drop in daytime highs in the mid-50s on the 19th and 20th. Warmer conditions prevailed between the 22nd and 26th, with highs reaching 80 degrees on the 24th and 25th. A cold front passed the region on the 27th, dropping daytime highs to the low 50s for the rest of the month. Before we begin to think about the upcoming winter, let's focus on the month of November. The outlook for the next month indicates temperatures and precipitation near the climatological average. As far as the next 3 months, through January, again, temperatures and precipitation are expected to remain near the climatological average. The question, what will winter be like, continues to be brought up in conversations I have with people. The answer I give them is, let's wait until we get closer to the end of November before I put my head on the block. Between now and then, anything could happen that changes everything.
Well, that's it for this week. Remember, if you don't vote, you don't get the right to complain. So work hard, be safe, and enjoy the beautiful sunsets. I'm Fred Peralta, and thanks for watching the Four Rivers Ag Report.